Vacation, some kind of trip? I really can't hear you. You gotta talk a little louder.
You hear me?
Yeah, barely. Go ahead, talk again. Say again.
I said my phone was dead yesterday, so I lost the code for the Zoom.
Oh,
so I had to charge it and it was already ended.
yeah.
And I kind of
How are you?
doing good. Baruch Hashem.
You have any plans for next year?
I'm planning to go back.
Ah, good. I'm gonna be involved. I'm gonna be more involved this coming year than I was last year, Mitzvah Hashem. That's the plan. Sorry?
What do you mean by more involved?
It's unofficial, so I don't want to give anything away, but I may be spending more time in Ache and less time in Tamche than I did last year.
We're going to have more classes on you?
More classes, more time. More time. Not just more classes, more time. Again, I don't want to speak, I don't want to count the chickens for the eggs hatch, but it looks that way. I'm leaning in that direction. Okay, I gotta say a joke. I'm so bad with jokes. I'm so terrible with jokes. Terrible jokes. Okay, here's a joke, just for the sake of telling a joke. Today is Thursday, and it's Chav Gimel, right? It's Chav Gimel Mar Cheshvan. Next Thursday is probably Beis Elul already, right? This is Shabbos Mevarchim. If Menachem Avos 30 days, yeah, next Thursday is the Chodesh Elul. So I'll tell you a joke that has to do with Elul, or a story that has to do with Elul. There's a ma'aser with Rabbi Munkes, which is very worth telling. Rabbi Munkes was the Matarem Zachosid, and he was actually a pretty great chassid. He was a pretty great chassid. He was a big chassid. He was a Baal Madrege. But his outer shtick, his outer appearance was of a jester. He always, as if he's making jokes, but there was nothing funny about Shmuel Munkes. His humor was very, very far from superficial. Anyway, the story is that he was traveling to the Alter Rebbe for Slichas, for Rosh Hashanah. And he got stuck in a tiny little village, the Shabbos for Rosh Hashanah. So that Motzei Shabbos, he stayed for Slichas. 1 o'clock in the morning, everyone gets up, you go to Shul, you say Slichas. So Shmuel Munkes also got up at 1 o'clock. Shmuel Munkes was sleeping, went to sleep after Shabbos. His host and hostess were very wonderful people, but very, very simple people. Woke him up at like 12 o'clock or 12:15 or 12:30. And they said to him, Rebbe, Medav gains to Slichas. Rebbe, we have to go to Slichas. So he woke up and he acted startled and surprised and confused. And he said, what Slichas? So they said to him, you look like another Mechashav, you look like a Talmud Chacham, you look like a Rav, you look like a Rosh Yeshiva, a Rebbe, and you don't know what Slichas is? So Shmuel Munkes says, no, I don't know what Slichas is. So they told him what Slichas means. You get up in the middle of the night, you go to Shul, and you daven that the cow should give milk and the chicken should lay eggs, and the field should produce good oats for the horses and good wheat for the people and potatoes and whatever else. At that time, with Shmuel Munkes, there were no potatoes in Europe, but let's leave that detail out. And that's why you got for Slichas. So Shmuel Munkes responded. He said, fair. Adult people getting up in the middle of the night to ask for food. Alte Leute stehen auf mitten nach Betten essen. Adult people getting up in the middle of the night to ask for food. Anyway, we geht bald to Elul. In een Woche van Heint is the Chodesh Elul, right? Wednesday and Thursday next is the Chodesh. So we don't want it to get up in the middle of the night to ask for food. We want it to be a little bit more than that. Okay. I cannot see you, but I know that you're there, so I'm going to be teaching you. We're starting Perek Tezvov today, from the beginning. Now, we completed Yudalit for better or for worse yesterday. What came out of yesterday's conversations. Conversation that means from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What came out from all those conversations? What came out from all those conversations is that there's two definitions of pnimius. When you use the word pnimius, there are two ways to define it. Now, this is how I presented it. This is how I taught you the perek. Let's translate in English. I'm sorry, I'm yawning. Let's translate the word pnimius as depth. That's a great word, depth, right? Makes people feel important. I'm a deep person. Deep means a confused Baltaiva, but don't tell anybody that. Let's translate pnimius as depth. So the way the perek, so to speak, plays out, there are two definitions of depth, two definitions of pnimius. Number one, the character and essence of the person. And number two, the effort and conscious and deliberate growth and self-transformation of the person. There are two pnimius. There's the pnimius, which is my guts, my viscera, my kishkes, my yechida, that the Eibishter gave me. And there's pnimius, what I work on myself to make myself into a better person. So in the language of this maimer, we call it keli enor. The vessel of the person, that's your bedrock, that's your personality, that's what God gave you. The light of the person is the proactive effort, that a person makes at self-development and at growth and advancement, etc., etc., etc. Those are two definitions of pnimius. So we said that a person's essence could be gevura, could be chesed, and their deliberate effort could be gevura. The first pash of Kriya Shema is ahava, love. Love means attachedness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Love means running towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wanting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Love also means softness. That's the bedrock character of the person in the first pash of Kriya Shema. The proactive, the conscious part of the person is that the person loves in a way of gevura. A person loves in a way that it exceeds his personality, loves in a way that it exceeds his nature. Like it says in Tanya chapter 50. And then there is an idea of Mesiras Nefesh. But the Mesiras Nefesh expresses itself in love. This is what we learned in the end of Perek Yudaled. Okay? At the first pash of Kriya Shema, the keli is chesed. The basic definition of the person is kindness. That's what Hashem made. The oyer is gevura. The proactive, conscious, deliberate, functional level of the person is gevura. The basic nature is chesed, and the function of it is gevura. So I love, that's my basic nature, and I love with an intensity of gevura, that's the developed nature, that's the created, that's the deliberate, that's the chosen character and personality. Now we're learning Perek Tezvav. Perek Tezvav is one point. Perek Tezvav is going to explain V'haya Mishamaya and it's the other side of the coin. If the first pash of Kriya Shema, the vessel is chesed and the light is gevura, the second pash of Kriya Shema is the other way around. The vessel is gevura and the light is chesed. So now we have to talk about this. In other words, what the Rebbe is doing here in this Perek Yudaled Tezvav is explaining what he said very, very briefly at the beginning of Perek Yudbeis. That's what we're doing. So let's think of it this way, okay? Imagine you have a Gevura personality. V'hoyim Shamaya is the Gevura personality. Imagine you have a Gevura personality. What's a Gevura personality? A Gevura personality is judging. A Gevura personality is critical. A Gevura personality is dissecting. And a Gevura personality is running away. In other words, Gevura, the meaning of the word Gevura in my vocabulary, my dictionary, is exactitude. I don't think you translate Gevura as meanness or even strength. Strength is a pretty good definition. But the most precise definition for the word Gevura is exactness, exactitude. Pinklichkeit, doing everything perfectly, exactly. That's the idea of Gevura. Exactitude, that's how I translate the word. What does exactitude mean? Everything has to be perfect. Now, in reality, the way things are perfect is by being judged. If you want something to be perfect, you sit and you study it, and you dissect it, you break it down into little tiny pieces, you look at each piece separately, you look at all the pieces together, and you judge and you judge and you judge and you judge. That's what Gevura does. So Gevura isn't mean or bad. Gevura is just very precise and very exact. So of course the reality of Gevura is, there's a pasuk that says, Hein hashamayim leizachu be'eina v'gam b'malochav yosim tahala. If Hashem would approach His world with midas hagavura, which is a midah of emes, right? It's truth. Every single person is going to be examined to his minutia. Every single creation is going to be split apart into 1,000 little tiny pieces, and each one is going to be examined individually. So the pasuk says, "Shamayim lezachu beinav," the heavens are not going to be good enough for the Eibishter, and Malachav Yasam Ta'ala, he's going to take his Malachim, he's going to destroy them because none of them are good enough. A Gevura reality can't exist. It could exist in theory, but it can't exist in reality. A Gevura reality means an environment where everything is judged and everything is criticized by being divided up into little pieces. And nobody is ever good enough if you live in a Gevura environment. The example that I always give when I talk about this is coming into a court of law. Right? People are oftentimes judged that they go to court. Right? They're being judged. Why are they going to court? They're going to court because they're accused of committing a crime. Let's say stealing money, whatever the case is. So they're being judged. Let's say a person is pulled into a court of law because they're accused of a crime that they did not commit. They didn't do it. So you would think, going into a court, when you're being accused of a crime they did not commit is benign. It can't hurt me, it's a lie, they'll bring witnesses, I'll refute the witnesses, I'll bring my witnesses, I'll establish my innocence or my non-guilt, as they like to say in America, and I'll be off the hook. But that's not the case. A person loses a court case when he walks through the door. The day you sit down in that box and you're cross-examined by a prosecutor, you lose. You know why? Because what do they do in a court of law? In a court of law, they don't judge you. Because every person is a mix of good and bad. They judge your actions. They'll take one thing you did in your life and they'll blow it up and they'll make it seem like this is your whole you. And even if you're not guilty, even if you're innocent, if you take any human being and you break him down, you reduce him to one action or a series of actions, and you judge him critically, everybody's going to look bad. Everyone's going to look bad. Which is, of course, why the defense lawyer, the defense team, what they want to do is shift the center. The prosecuting attorney, the kategir, the critical lawyer, the one who works for the government, his job is to reduce the accused to an action. We're looking at a person, looking at what a person did. The defense attorney, on the other hand, says, wait, don't look at this action, look at the whole person. Look at the whole person, look at his whole life, look how he's lived, look how he conducts himself, and decide whether this is a good person or a bad person. That's what the war is, that's what the engagement is between the two attorneys. Because the Gevura attorney doesn't want to lie. He just wants to accentuate the negative by singling out, by isolating it. The chesed attorney, the defense attorney, says, don't look at the individual action of the person, look at the person as a whole. Because if a person is judged critically, nobody's good enough. No one is good enough. So this is the struggle, this is the debate, this is the engagement between Gvura and Chesed. Gvura tears a person to pieces into little single individual actions. Chesed is like water, it dilutes, it mixes everything together. So Chesed overlooks certain chesrenis, which is also a problem because you have junk in the water. Gvura, on the other hand, is so critical, it's so judging, that there's no chesrenis, but there's nobody that's good enough. That's the problem with Gevura. So let's be very clear. Gevura isn't bad, it's just exact. And in a reality that's exact, it's almost impossible for people to survive. I found a medrash, which is brought in Hasidus, that there was a debate between Chesed and Emes. Chesed and Emes Tivgashu. Kindness and truth had a meeting. And the meeting had a third principle. Who was the third principle at the meeting? The third principle at the meeting was the Eibishter himself. What was the content of the meeting? The content of the meeting was a simple question. Should Hashem create the world or should Hashem not create the world? Chesed said, make the world. And Emes said, don't make the world. Kindness said, make the world, it's worth it because a lot of good will come. Severity, exactness said, don't make the world because people are going to disappoint you. There's no way for a person to be perfect enough. It's simply not possible. And that's what Midas HaGvura is. So let's say, for example, I'll go back to say. Let's say, for example, a person has a Gvura personality. A person who has a Gvura personality is very critical. He's very exact. He's very judging. He's very demanding. He's demanding and judging of himself. He's demanding and judging of others. So he's being honest. He's being righteous. But everybody hates him. He's a miserable person. And not only does everybody hate him, he hates himself because he's also a miserable person. He's so busy nitpicking. And all he's doing is trying to be honest and truthful. So if a person has a Gevura personality, they want to temper that with Chesed. If a person has a Gevura personality, they want to live their lives in a way where they're overcoming that tendency towards their exactitude and their precision and their judgmentalism and their preciseness for a softer, kinder self. And that's called Oyer HaChesed Beklei HaGevura, the light of kindness in the vessel of Gvura, of exactitude. The first parsha of Krishma was Oyer HaGevura Beklei HaChesed. The Chesed, the Keli was Chesed, Ava, love, Pshora, dilution, diluting. And the light was Gevura, was being exact, was running towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Parshas V'hayim Shemai is the other way around. The bedrock, the Keli, the pnimius in terms of what the Eibishter made is Gvura, is judging and exact and precise and critical. The Oyer is Chesed, the light which is overlapping on this Keli is one of benevolence, of kindness, of embracing, of inclusiveness, because Gevura by itself is unsustainable. Okay, so now this is what we have so far. I'm introducing Perek Tezvav. I've been talking, I don't know, about 15 minutes I'm going to gather. I don't know how long this shir is going on so far. This shir is going on about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Okay? And we're learning Perek Tezvav, starting Perek Tezvav. And of course, Perek Tezvav is about V'hayim Shemaya. What's V'hayim Shemaya? The Keli is Gevura. The Keli means the vessel, the basic personality of Pasha Shni, of Kriya Shema, is like a human being who has a critical and exact and exacting personality. Very critical, which is very, you can't live that way. Because the Keli is Gevura, the Oyer is Chesed. One of benevolence, of kindness, of dilution, of embracing. So again, the two pnimius would be the pnimius that the Eibishter made one with. In this case, that pnimius is Gevura. And the pnimius that the person sort of imposes upon himself through his work and through his effort, which is the idea of Chesed. Now, one more thing. I keep on emphasizing that the idea of Gevura is exactitude, and that's true. But there's another side to Gevura. And the other side to Gevura is Aliyah. is ascent, is going up. And very simply speaking, the two are connected. It actually makes sense that the two go together, because anybody or any reality that's defined by exactitude, by judgmentalism, cannot be sustained. It can't exist. So in a world where everybody is critical and exact and precise, you're essentially running away from living. Because in order to live, you have to have compromise. In order to live, you have to overlook. In order to live, you have to accept. In order to live, you have to forgive. In order to live, you have to make compromises. In order to live, you have to give benefit of the doubt. In order to live, you have to do a favor. All of these things are antithetical to Gevura, but that's how a society is. So the two sides of Gevura, is number one, Gevura is very critical, and number two, Gevura essentially runs away from existence. Which is why, when Chesed and Emes met, right, the famous Medrash that I mentioned before, when kindness and truth met, truth said, Al Yiva, don't create a world, because a world based on Gevura is a world which will self-destruct. Nothing about it is going to be perfect enough for sustenance. Okay? So, I hope I'm not going too fast. I really hope I'm not going too fast.
No, you're fine, all right.
I can't see you, but I can hear you. Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that. So let me say one more thing. And then we're going to read a little bit of the text. Okay? The mashal for chesed is water. What do you know about water? Water is a solvent. It dilutes things. Things melt in water. Water is also an adhesive, right? The particles of the molecules of water stick together. And water is viscous. Pardon me?
I said nothing.
I can't hear you.
I said nothing.
And water flows. It goes from a high place to a low place. So in Ruchnius, chesed dilutes. If you have small chesrenis, chesed will overlook them. Chesed will stick together, it'll bond. And chesed will bring kindness into the world. It'll come from a higher level to a lower level. And Gevura is like fire. When we say Gevura is like fire, there's two halves. Two parts, two halves to the exactitude of Gevura. There's the fire itself, and there's what happens to the fuel. The fire is ascending. There you are. The fire is going up. The fire is going up from a lower level to a higher level. And it's really going away. And the fuel, the matter which is holding on to the fire, is being crumbled and broken down into tinier and tinier and tiny little particles. It's being made into ash, fine dust. So if you think about it, Chesed is philosophically one idea, and Gevura is philosophically two ideas. The one idea of Chesed is to dilute, to adhere to bring bonds together, and to come from a high level to a lower level. That's what water does. Gevura has a higher level and a lower level. The higher level of Gevura is to run away from life, come one with God. And the lower level of Gevura is to dissect, is to split things up into so many little minutia that nothing is good enough. So if you think about Mitzvas Hatefilla, you know two things. The upside, the running to Hashem is a Maila. You become one with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What could be wrong with that? But the dust, the ash, the judged that is left over is destroyed. If you would make a world where everybody is constantly judging everybody else, those who are perfect are closer to God than the people who are perfect in our world. But those who are not perfect are disposed of. They're thrown away. They're no good. They're broken down to little pieces, and you focus on every one of their flaws and inexactitudes and iniquities, and throw them away. In other words, to say what I just said, in other words, Gevura, when it's good, is better than Chesed. Gevura, when it's bad, is cruel. It's worse than Chesed. That's why life has to have a composite. You have to have a little bit of Chesed, a little bit of Gevura. So in the first parsha of Krishma, the bedrock, the basic personality is Ahava, is Chesed, is love. Gevura adds an intensity to it. And the second parsha of Krishma is the other way around. The bedrock, the basic idea of Ahayim Shameya is to Gevura. Gevura means on the one hand running to Hashem, running away from the world. On the other hand, it's about dissecting and finding and examining every little detail where, as the Pasuk says, Shemaim le'zacha be'eina v'gam b'malachav yasam tahala, nobody is good enough. But for V'hoyim Shomea to work, for the second parsha of Kriyas Shema, which is an union of Gevura, to work, it has Oira Chesed. And again, going back to the form that we discussed in the Shir from yesterday and the day before, there are two definitions of Pnimius. There are two definitions of depth. Definition A of depth is the personality God gave you. The definition B of depth is the effort we make on becoming better people. In V'hoyim Shomea, the God-given depth is Gevura. Running towards Hashem, splitting everything up into minutia, nobody's good enough. The humanly contributed component to V'hoyim Shomea is Chesed. And in the classic language of Kabbalah, V'hoyim Shomea is Oir HaChesed B'Keli HaGevura, the light of kindness and the vessel of exactitude. So how does this play out? How does Oir HaChesed play out B'Keli HaGevura? How does Oir HaChesed play out B'Keli HaGevura? I'll tell you how it works. Gevura alone is two extremes. Gevura by itself is two extremes. Either I'm so holy, I'm running to Hashem and I'm burning up in my unity with God. Or I am so exposed, all of my chassidus are so exposed, I'm rendered so vulnerable, so inexact that I'm junk. Add kindness to that, add benevolence to that, add water to that. And Chassidus comes up with a fascinating commentary. And to say it cliche-ishly, to say it as a cliche, which is of course America's favorite pastime, too much can be as bad or worse than too little. If I give you too much water, I'll flood your house. If I give Rahman too much electricity, there can be a fire. Too little is no good also. But too much is also not good. So the definition of Oira Chesed B'Keli HaGevura, the second parsha of Kriyas Shema, V'hoyim Shomaya, it's bedrock, it's pnimius, assuming that the definition of the word pnimius is basic personality, is very critical, very exact, which is not good. But the secondary pnimius, the pnimius which has to do with the human effort, is chesed, kindness. What is the nature of the composite? When you bring the two together, what do you have? You have controlled kindness. When you want to help another person, you give them things. But you want to give them things that they could use. You know, the old example of, you don't want to be a meanie, so you give your little kid a razor blade. Because he wants it. You don't want to be a meanie, so you give a person who has no experience millions of dollars and no responsibility and watch them destroy themselves and destroy the wealth that you gave them. In order for kindness to be kind, it has to be tempered. It has to be limited. It has to be controlled. And that's V'hoyim Shomaya. Oira Chesed, the adding a light of kindness, B'Keli HaGevura. The foundation, the essence, the personality is exact. The light is Chesed. The combination is controlled kindness. Controlled kindness. I'm sure you know this. This is quite famous. That they've shown over and over again that people who win the lottery, they win millions of dollars, are often impoverished, right? They're not necessarily middle class or upper middle class or rich people. People who win the lottery, they win millions of dollars, within a year or two or three are bankrupt. Because they have no skill, they have no ability to manage their wealth. It's so much, it's so quick, they're so unprepared that they literally self-destruct. If a person wins millions of dollars and they have experience, even a limited experience, they have a sense, they have enough seichel to know how to manage and control that wealth, their wealth is sustainable and that wealth will actually grow. But the criteria for the sustaining and for the expanding this wealth is control. Chesed by itself is as destructive as Gevura by itself. Gevura by itself is destructive by burning things up and by finding fault in it. Chesed by itself is destructive because it's too much. The Rebbe once said by Fabrengen that he's going to stop doing certain things that he used to do because of the principle of Reiv Teva Ein Yechem L'Kabel. The Rebbe says, I'm giving too much kindness, too much light, too much Chasidus, and the Chassidim are not Chassidim can't handle how much I'm giving them. The Rebbe sort of said that. And that's V'haya Im Shemaya. V'haya Im Shemaya means the basic personality of Gevura is being enriched by the light of kindness. The combination is a controlled kindness. Okay? Questions or comments?
Would chesed be like, for example, how when you think in like court system, you would say that it's like the godly court?
It's like what?
Godly court.
Godly court, did I hear correctly?
As in like the good court.
Pardon me?
And like go to having
This-
and you get the judge for your life. Would that be kind of example of a chesed court?
Okay, ask your question again. The sound on my computer is low, so say it a little slower.
Would a example of chesed would be the heaven court when you pass away?
I don't remember from my last experience, and I'm not looking forward for my next experience. I'll say it to you diplomatically. I'll be politically correct. I don't think any court is useful if it is either only chesed or only gvura. A court that is only chesed doesn't correct people, doesn't help them. Right? The real purpose of a court of law, the real purpose of a system of jurisprudence, socially, communally, on a collective level, is to keep the society in check. That people should be able to walk in the streets, people should be able to do commerce, people should be able to interact and relate to each other without killing each other. But on an individual level, if you're talking about individual people, if a person is being judged and you're being unconditionally kind, you're not helping them. Because if you want to help a person, you want to judge the person, you want to punish the person, so they'll learn their lessons. I saw from the Rebbe that Mayor Lindsay, he was the mayor in the late 60s, visited the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said to him, when you prosecute a African-American kid for committing a crime against theft, you're actually helping prevent him from becoming a violent offender. When you punish somebody for a smaller crime, you teach them not to commit crime. When you tell a person, it's only a misdemeanor, it's only a minor act, we're going to overlook it, you're encouraging them to become a bigger criminal. So kindness by itself in any system of law is not good. The purpose of a legal system is to hold people accountable and when necessary punish. But the magic word, which of course is totally meaningless in America, but it's the word that they still use, is corrections, right? The prison system is called correctional. Nobody's doing any correcting. It's a terrible environment to be in. But in theory, it's a place of correction. You punish a person. Again, you're punishing a person because of the greater society. But on the individual level, you're punishing a person to educate him. So just being nice to him because he had a bad childhood is not helping him. You have to punish him. On the other hand, if the punishment becomes vengeance, where you punish in a very, very extreme way, where you hold people to a very, very high standard, and you don't forgive people, and you don't give people second chances, and you don't overlook certain crimes, it's also an unsustainable society. That can't be. So, the Shema is saying love by itself is no good, you have to have Gevura. V'haya Im Shemaya is saying exactness by itself can't be, you have to have love. Now, let's talk about the heavenly court. You have to assume that the heavenly court knows what I just said. It knows that chesed by itself will bring to destruction, and Gevura by itself is destruction. In other words, when we pass away and we come l'mayla, the heavenly court is not there to punish us. The heavenly court is to move us forward, to help us grow, to go to a higher level. If that involves a punishment or an exactness, the direction, the spirit of that is not to hurt me and to take revenge or to get back at me, but to cleanse me so that I can go up to a higher level. So I'm answering your question without answering it. You're asking me a very pointed question. what I call the heavenly court a place of kindness? And my answer is, a court which is only kind isn't a court. It's a hippie fabrengen. There has to be laws, there has to be consequences. But the spirit of the court is not to hurt people, but to correct people. And that's really very kind. Is that a fair answer?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll see you Sunday, Mitzvah Hashem, if you'll make it. And we're going to learn inside. Today we just had a lecture.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. I really mean it. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to me. Good morning.